With tears streaming down her face, she signed the divorce papers, shredded the pregnancy test, and for the first time in months, silence didn't feel like comfort. But this isn't where her story began. It began on a Sunday morning, when the world still felt whole, and love still sounded like a promise that would never break. Ayla believed in quiet happiness, the kind that didn't need grand gestures or social media posts. Her mornings started with brewing Ryan's favorite coffee, even when he forgot to thank her. She ironed his shirts, left little notes in his briefcase, and filled their home with warmth only she seemed to notice. He would smile, distractedly, while checking his phone, offering a half-hearted kiss before leaving. She convinced herself it was normal, routine, not neglect. Love, she thought, was just learning to find joy in the ordinary. Their marriage had begun beautifully. They met at a mutual friend's art exhibition. She had been the quiet one, sketchbook in hand, while he was all confidence and laughter. He noticed her sketches first, a series of faceless portraits. "You draw emotions better than people," he'd said. She smiled, embarrassed. That night, he walked her home, and the world had seemed to glow. 2 years later, they were married under fairy lights, promising eternity. But eternity, she learned, can shrink. The promises faded first. He stopped waiting for her at dinner, claiming deadlines and urgent campaigns. She told herself he was just ambitious, that love doesn't always mean constant presence. She ignored the new cologne he wore, the lipstick stains faintly brushed on his shirt collar, a shade she didn't own. She ignored the way he turned his phone face down whenever a message appeared. She ignored the late-night showers after client dinners. Love, she believed, was patient. So she waited. Every evening, she set the table for two, even when he didn't come home. The clinking of cutlery became her company. She'd scroll through old photos, trying to remember what it felt like when he looked at her and truly saw her. But now, his eyes were somewhere else, on someone else. Still, she smiled when he came home late, pretending to sleep so he wouldn't have to explain. She made his favorite breakfast in the morning, and when he didn't touch it, she quietly packed it away. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't know how to stop the slow unraveling. Her best friend, Zara, noticed first. "You're fading, Ayla," she said over coffee one afternoon. "You talk about him like he's a memory." Ayla laughed it off, but the words stayed. That night, she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. The sparkle in her eyes had dulled. She wasn't living, just enduring. Then came the morning that changed everything. She woke up nauseous, dizzy, her body heavy with a strange exhaustion. She assumed it was stress, but something in her whispered otherwise. On her way home from work, she stopped by a pharmacy. The test sat on the bathroom counter for what felt like hours before she found the courage to look. 2 lines. Positive. Her heart pounded. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear, but from a flicker of hope. Maybe this would bring them closer again. Maybe the child growing inside her could save what was left of them. She imagined telling him over dinner, imagined his face lighting up, imagined his arms around her like before. That night, she cooked his favorite meal, biryani, the way he liked it. She set the table, lit candles, even put on the perfume he once said he loved. But the clock ticked past midnight. The candles melted to wax puddles. His chair stayed empty. Her phone buzzed once, working late. "Don't wait up." She stared at the message until it blurred. Her fingers hovered over the reply button. But what could she say? "I'm pregnant. Please come home." She deleted the words before typing them. Instead, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow. I'll tell him tomorrow." Tomorrow came and went, and so did the next. He was always busy. Always somewhere else. The small things became louder. The scent of unfamiliar perfume lingering in his car. The way he laughed while texting, then quickly turned off the screen when she walked in. The coldness in his goodnight kisses. Mechanical, empty. Love had become a routine, not a feeling. One evening, she drove to his office with dinner. A surprise, she told herself. He wasn't there. The receptionist said he'd left hours ago. She sat in her car outside the building, staring at the empty parking spot where his car should have been. Something inside her cracked. She started noticing things she had ignored before. A hotel receipt tucked into his wallet. A gold bracelet in the glove compartment, engraved with the initials MA. She wasn't naive. She knew what it meant. But still, she hoped there was an explanation, some reason that didn't hurt. That night, she confronted him gently. "Who's Maya?" she asked, her voice trembling. He blinked. Too quickly. "A client." "Clients don't leave jewelry in your car." He sighed, irritation flashing in his eyes. "You're imagining things again, Ayla. You've become paranoid." Paranoid. The word echoed in her head long after he'd gone to bed. She didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, holding the positive test in her palm. Her tears fell onto it, blurring the lines. She wanted to believe him, but deep down, she already knew the truth. Days turned into weeks. Their conversations turned into silence. He stopped looking at her altogether. He lived beside her, not with her. She learned the rhythm of his lies, the urgent meetings, the business trips, the calls he took in the other room. She stopped asking questions. She was tired of hearing excuses. And then, one morning, while cleaning the living room, she found his jacket draped carelessly on the sofa. In the pocket, a photo strip. Him and another woman, smiling, playful, intimate. The woman's face pressed against his. Her hair was long, wavy. Her name was written on the back in his handwriting. Maya. Ayla stared at it for a long time, her hands shaking. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She just folded the photo and placed it on the table. Later, she went to their bedroom, lay down, and stared at the ceiling until morning. The pain was too vast to cry about. At work, she smiled at her students, pretending everything was fine. But during lunch, she went to the restroom and cried silently, her hand resting on her stomach. She wasn't crying for him anymore, she was crying for herself, for the woman who kept forgiving the unforgivable. That night, she wrote in her journal, "I used to think love meant holding on. Maybe it means knowing when to let go." The next evening, Ryan came home late again. She asked no questions. She simply said, "Dinner's on the table." He nodded, distracted, scrolling through his phone. When he went to bed, she stayed awake, staring at the photo she had kept hidden in her drawer. Her love had become a ghost haunting her own home. Zara called her again. "You can't keep pretending, Ayla," she said softly. "He doesn't deserve your silence." Ayla didn't respond. She couldn't. Because silence was all she had left. Weeks later, Ayla noticed something strange. The plant by the window, one she'd stopped watering, had started to wither completely. Its leaves drooped, its soil dry. She picked it up, staring at it for a long time. Then she realized, she had been the plant all along, alive, but neglected, dying quietly while still rooted in hope. That night, as Ryan slept. The morning after discovering the messages, Ayla didn't cry. She moved through the motions of life like someone performing a role they no longer believed in. She made breakfast, poured his coffee, smiled when he glanced her way, but inside, she felt hollow. Every good morning felt like a lie. Every heartbeat echoed betrayal. Ryan noticed the quietness. "You're distant lately," he said, buttoning his shirt. She looked up from her plate. "Am I?" Her tone was steady. Too steady. He shrugged, kissed her forehead without warmth, and left. The door closed behind him, and the silence that followed felt heavier than before. Ayla sat at the table long after he was gone. The clock ticked, the sunlight moved across the floor, and the world went on, indifferent. She pulled out her journal and wrote one line, "He doesn't even see that I'm gone already." That evening, she followed her instinct instead of his lies. He had said he was working late again. But she knew better now. She drove aimlessly at first, unsure where to go, her heart pounding. Then she saw his car parked outside a restaurant, one they used to love. The sight of it made her chest tighten. She sat there in the shadows, hands gripping the steering wheel, breath shallow. Through the window, she saw him. And her. Maya. The woman from the photo. The woman who had Ryan's smile now. They sat close, laughing softly. He reached across the table and brushed a strand of hair from Maya's face, the same gentle touch that once made Ayla blush. Ayla didn't cry. She just watched. It was strange how calm heartbreak could be when it had been coming for so long. She watched until her vision blurred, then drove away in silence, her body trembling but her mind frighteningly clear. Love was gone, and she had witnessed its burial. Back home, she turned off the lights and sat on the floor. She thought of all the nights she'd stayed awake waiting for him, all the dinners gone cold, all the tears she'd swallowed to keep the peace. She thought of the baby growing inside her, innocent, unwanted by the man who should have been overjoyed. When Ryan came home later that night, he smelled faintly of perfume, not hers. He slipped into bed without a word. Ayla stared at the ceiling, the shadows flickering above her. She whispered, "I saw you." He froze. Silence. Then, slowly, he turned toward her. "What do you mean?" "I saw you with her." He exhaled, long and tired, as if her pain were an inconvenience. "You shouldn't have followed me." "So it's true," she said quietly. "You're with her." He didn't deny it. "Ayla, things have been broken for a long time. You know that." Her voice shook. "Then why didn't you fix them? Why did you lie?" He rubbed his temples, avoiding her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you." She laughed, a sound empty of joy. "You didn't want to hurt me, but you destroyed everything instead." He got up, muttering, "I can't do this right now," and left the room. She listened to his footsteps fade down the hallway. That was the last night they shared a bed. The next morning, he was gone before she woke. A note sat on the kitchen counter. "Need space. Don't call me." She stared at the paper until the words blurred, then ripped it in half. Her hand shook as she reached for her phone. She wanted to call Zara, to tell her everything, but the words wouldn't form. What could she say? That her husband had replaced her, that her love story had turned into someone else's. Instead, she packed a small bag and left the house. She drove with no destination, just a need to escape the walls that now held too many ghosts. She ended up at the beach, their beach, where he'd once written her name in the sand. The tide had long erased it, just as time had erased his promises. She sat on the damp shore, staring at the horizon. "Why wasn't I enough?" she whispered. The wind carried no answer. By evening, she returned home. The house felt foreign, stripped of warmth. She opened the drawer where she'd hidden the pregnancy test, holding it like something fragile and cursed. "You deserve better," she murmured, her voice trembling. "You deserve love that doesn't lie." Days blurred into each other. Ryan didn't call. When he finally came back, a week later, he looked like a stranger. His eyes carried guilt, but not regret. He said he was sorry, but the words sounded rehearsed. "It just happened," he said. "I didn't plan to fall in love with her." Ayla's laugh was sharp. "You fell out of love with me. That's what happened." He looked down. "Maybe. I don't know when it started, but Maya makes me feel alive again." "Alive?" she repeated, her voice breaking. "And what was I? The ghost you married?" He didn't answer. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she asked, softly, "Was any of it real, Ryan?" He hesitated. "Of course it was. You were my comfort. She's just—" "Don't," Ayla interrupted. "Don't finish that sentence. I don't want to know what she is. I already know what I'm not." She walked away before he could respond. In the bedroom, she sat on the edge of the bed, numb. The truth had been spoken, and yet the pain didn't lessen. It deepened, settling into her bones. That night, she didn't cry. She packed his clothes into a suitcase, folded them neatly, placed it by the door. When he saw it, he looked startled. "You're kicking me out." "I'm setting you free," she said quietly. "You've already left. I'm just making it official." He tried to say something, but she stopped him with a gesture. "Go to her. Be happy. Just don't come back when it breaks you too." He left without another word. The sound of the door closing echoed like a final heartbeat. Ayla stood there, staring at the empty space where he'd stood. The silence afterward felt like drowning. Every part of the house carried his absence, the chair he used to sit in, the smell of his cologne still lingering in the air. She wandered through each room like a ghost, touching the remnants of their life together. Later that night, She found herself in the bathroom again, staring at her reflection. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. She touched her stomach gently. "It's just us now," she whispered. The words felt heavy, but real. The next morning, she called a lawyer. The word divorce tasted bitter, but she said it anyway. The process began: signatures, forms, meetings that felt more like funerals. Ryan didn't resist. Maybe guilt made it easier for him. He agreed to everything, quickly, cleanly, as if cutting ties from a burden. When the papers arrived at her door, she stared at them for hours. Her pen hovered over the signature line. All she had to do was sign, and their marriage would officially end. But how do you sign away years of love, dreams, laughter, and pain with one motion? Her tears fell onto the page, smudging the ink as she wrote her name. It didn't feel like freedom yet, only loss. She placed the papers aside, walked to the drawer, and took out the pregnancy test. She held it tight, her nails digging into her palm. She wanted to scream, to destroy something, to feel anything other than this hollow ache. Then the phone rang. "Zara. Ayla, please tell me you're okay." "I'm breathing," Ayla said. "That's not the same thing." Silence hung between them. Then Zara said softly, "You deserve peace, Ayla. Don't let his choices define your worth." Ayla swallowed hard. "I don't know who I am without him." "Yes, you do," Zara replied. "You just forgot for a while." After the call, Ayla sat in the dark, letting the words settle. Maybe Zara was right. Maybe. A week after the divorce papers were signed, the house no longer felt like home. The walls seemed to echo his name in their silence, and every object carried a memory she didn't want. Ayla spent mornings sitting by the window with a cup of tea that always went cold, watching the city wake up without her. She had imagined grief would feel explosive, loud, dramatic, but instead it was quiet, a slow ache beneath the skin. The paperwork was done. His things were gone. His name removed from the mailbox. Yet he lingered, in scents, in shadows, in the space beside her on the bed. At night, she still reached for him in her sleep, her hand finding only emptiness. Her lawyer had called that morning. "It's finalized," he said gently. "You're officially divorced." Officially free, she thought, but the word free didn't taste sweet. It was metallic, bitter, heavy. She ended the call, set the phone down, and stared at the floor for a long time. She picked up the ultrasound photo from the drawer, tracing the outline with her fingertip. That heartbeat, small and fragile, was now her only constant. The pregnancy felt both like a blessing and a burden. She was terrified. How could she raise a child when she barely recognized herself anymore? That afternoon, she went to her doctor again. The nurse congratulated her, unaware of the storm behind Ayla's calm smile. "You're strong," the nurse said kindly, handing her a new scan. Ayla nodded but said nothing. Strong. The word echoed in her chest like a dare. On her way home, she passed a park where mothers pushed strollers and laughed together. The sight made her throat tighten. She imagined herself there one day, alone but not lonely, maybe smiling again. The thought scared her and soothed her at the same time. At home, she poured herself water and sat on the couch, staring at nothing. The plant by the window, once dead, was growing new leaves. She had started watering it again, without realizing why. Maybe because she wanted to believe she, too, could grow again. That night, she dreamed of Ryan. He stood in their old kitchen, smiling, holding a baby in his arms. When she reached for them, both vanished. She woke up crying, clutching her stomach, whispering, "You still have me." The days that followed became a rhythm of silence, reflection, and small survival rituals. Morning tea. Short walks. Writing in her journal. She avoided calls from relatives who would ask questions she didn't want to answer. She ignored social media altogether. She couldn't bear to see his life continuing as if she had never existed. Then, one evening, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hi Ayla. I'm Maya. Please don't block me. I just need to say something." Her fingers froze above the screen. For a long moment, she stared, unsure whether to read further. But curiosity, or maybe the need for closure, won. She opened it. I didn't know about you when it started. He told me you were separated. I only found out the truth later. I'm sorry. For everything. Ayla felt the world tilt slightly. Her chest tightened, not with anger, but with a strange relief. She wasn't crazy. She hadn't imagined the lies. She typed a reply, deleted it, then typed again. You owe me nothing. He lied to us both. Maya's response came quickly. You deserve better than him. I wish I'd known sooner. Ayla didn't reply again. There was nothing more to say. She set the phone down and sat in silence. For the first time, she didn't feel hatred, only clarity. The betrayal hadn't been a love triangle. It had been a web of lies spun by a man too weak to be honest. That night, she took out the pregnancy test, the one she'd kept hidden all this time, and stared at it for a long while. It wasn't a symbol of him anymore. It was a reminder of how deeply she'd loved, how much she'd endured, and how she had survived the wreckage. Slowly, she tore it in half and dropped it into the trash. The sound was small, almost insignificant, but it felt like release. She whispered into the quiet, "You don't define me anymore." After that night, something shifted. She began reclaiming her space. She repainted the living room in soft beige, threw out the curtains he'd chosen, replaced their wedding photo with a watercolor painting she'd made years ago, faceless figures holding hands. She started sketching again, the first time in months. Each stroke of her pencil felt like breathing after being underwater too long. When Zara visited a few days later, she stopped in the doorway, surprised. "You look different," she said. "Lighter." Ayla smiled faintly. "Maybe because I'm not pretending anymore." Zara hugged her tight. "You're going to be okay." "I already am," Ayla said, and for the first time, she believed it. Still, healing wasn't linear. Some nights were harder than others. Some mornings, she woke up reaching for a man who no longer existed in her life. Other days, she found herself smiling for no reason, grateful just to be breathing without the weight of lies on her chest. One afternoon, as rain tapped softly against the windows, she opened her journal again. Her handwriting had grown steadier, her words surer. She wrote, "I forgive him, not because he deserves it, but because I deserve peace." It wasn't about erasing what he did. It was about not letting it poison what came next. The next week, she met with her lawyer to finalize property papers. He congratulated her on handling everything gracefully. She smiled politely. Grace, she thought, wasn't quiet endurance. It was surviving heartbreak without turning cruel. Back home, she stood before the mirror, studying her reflection. There were faint lines of exhaustion beneath her eyes, but her gaze was steady. Her hand rested on her stomach again. The life inside her was growing, silent, steady, certain. She whispered, "We're going to be okay."